I've lived everywhere, man. In Texas, anyway. From Waco to Lubbock, Corpus to El Paso, Dallas to San Antonio, with Houston in between. From the defenders of the Alamo centuries ago to Medal of Honor winners of today. We don't ever want to forget the contributions our Mexican-American forefathers have made to enrich the lives of all Texans. We also want to recognize today's rising stars that are paving the way for Texas' next 200 years. May God bless Texas. This is TXMX TV. Hi, and thank you for joining us for another episode of TXMX TV. My name is Orlando Salazar, your host, and we've got a really cool show set for you today. Fortunately, it's another person that I've come to know very well over the last few months. He's an awesome young man, and as I have shared many times on previous shows and on the intro, we are always looking out for rising stars. And in my mind, there's no better example of a rising star than Juan Feria. Juan is just an outstanding young man. You're going to get to know a little bit about him here in a little bit. But Juan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Orlando.
You bet. Juan and I met, several months ago. It hasn't been that long that we've known each other. But he impressed me immediately because he is just of such great character. When you meet him, you can just see there's something special and unique about him. And he's really just an awesome guy. So Juan, welcome to the show. We usually start out by just asking people to tell us about where they were born, where they grew up, their family. So let's go ahead and start at the very beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in Starr County, Texas, a little city called Rio Grande City. I grew up in Roma, Texas, neighbors Escobares, Texas, a very small border town in Texas.
So Rio Grande City, Starr County, way down, right on the border, right?
My house was here, and the river was there. So you could literally walk to the river, throw a rock across.
The Rio Grande was right there.
Correct.
Very unique way to grow up. When did you understand, at what age did you start understanding being right on the Rio Grande, what that meant and what that was like, and what made that so unique? When did it kind of hit you that, wow, I'm right on the border?
You know, it was a Hispanic community, as most border towns are, in the valley, in the McAllen area, all the way up to Laredo and El Paso. So there's a very close-knit relationship between the U.S. side and the Mexico side. So it is very common for people to go over to Mexico, have breakfast, have lunch, go out there on the weekends, have a good time, right? With friends or family. It's a normal thing. So to me, growing up, it was just one of those things that I knew was unique.
Yeah. But being right on the river, though, I mean, actually living on the river, you saw some things that most people don't see, being right on the river. Talk to us about growing up on the river, observing activity on the river that a lot of us just hear about, but we don't live with it every day.
The real hardball questions, Orlando, right to the point. Okay,
yeah.
So, there's good and bad of living on the border, right? There's a lot of good people on both sides, but there's also some very bad people coming across those borders that who knows where they're from, right? We can't properly vet them. But I've witnessed a lot of things come through those borders in my time. Through my property, mind you, we had very close-knit relationships with the local police department, the Border Patrol. They go into our property, make sure things were as in order as possible. And they have full access to the borders on there, but they just don't have enough manpower to protect. One clear example is walking up to a bus stop early morning, 6:30 in the morning, literally less than a block away from my home across the street.
How old are you? What grade?
That was 6th grade.
Okay.
5th or 6th grade. Very young. Waiting there, and I see a car pull up right next to my home where we have, brush, mesquite, just property from the ranch. And I see a group of 12 plus individuals hop into this vehicle and take off. immediately. Family usually calls someone just to be on the safe side. Don't want to have any crazy people out in our property where we can't feel comfortable or safe sleeping at night. What's interesting about this incident is that in the past, we had seen some people that needed help, right? Some people with children, with a wife. But in this incident, when I got home from school, walked the property, I found cement bags sitting in my property and at the other side of the fence of my property, so in public property. I called the police department. They came to check on it, and they found a lot of cocaine in these cement bags. So immediately you know that there's a lot of bad people coming through. There's a lot of danger involved when there's a lot of money on stake.
Yes.
In those areas.
Yep. So that was a common occurrence being on the river.
I think, to put it simply, Stark County is the lowest income county in the nation. Escobares, where my home was, is the lowest income city in the entire nation. But they've also been known to be the most import of drugs into the United States.
So extreme poverty, where you grew up. Tell us about your family, brothers, sisters, that kind of relationship, and the dynamics of all that being in the valley.
We were very poor materialistic, but we were very rich in values, I think. Grew up with adoptive World War II grandparents. They adopted my mother out of Mexico. She worked as a waitress, but have 3 sisters, all younger than me. All of them have a job. Fortunately, all of them have schooling below their belts, right? We all came through, grew up in a literally 400 plus square foot shack with aluminum roof on it, where, when you get hail in South Texas sometimes, it's a little scary.
You can hear it.
You can hear it.
Yeah,
you can feel it. You can feel it.
Yeah, you can feel it. Yeah.
One window, no door in the restroom, right? It was just, shower was barely operational.
So there was your mom, your 2 sisters, and yourself.
Myself. My dad was a welder, and so he traveled to maintain the family. And it's a very common occurrence out there for people that have to earn a living.
Right.
The oil industry is what sustains.
Oil fields.
Yeah.
Yep. You grew up in that little house. At what point do you either move or things get better?
I think we never felt poor. We always had what we needed: food, roof over our heads, etc. I think my mother is the most selfless person in the world. Very stern when it comes to educational standards. Go to school, make sure you do your homework. My grandparents, our first language is Spanish. They wouldn't speak Spanish to me. If I spoke or said something in Spanish, they wouldn't even respond. That's how I really learned how to speak English, I think, properly or better than most of my peers at the time. But ultimately, it was just...
Did you live in that same little house all through high school?
No, so we moved around in the same neighborhoods.
Okay.
At some point, we had to move into government assisted housing, which is called Section 8 homes, right? Because of the income level, the same area. At some point, we were homeless. We've been homeless for 2 weeks, literally living out on the border, like on the woods, coming back, getting food, fishing for food. Rough times, right? But at the end of the day, we were safe. We had our family. It was a very short stint. Dad had issues with transitioning from one job to another. And, then in those times, there's no savings for those types of families.
Right.
It's all or nothing.
Well, obviously, your grandparents, your parents, they did something right, because we look at you today and you're just an awesome young man. So you make it through high school, right? Did you play any sports in high school?
I played football. I was in track. I was a violinist. I was in a mariachi. So I did a little bit of drama. I was kind of in the middle of it all.
Jack of all trades.
Master of none.
But when you're in a small school like that, you have the opportunity to participate in lots of different things.
Correct. And to give you an idea, the population of the town was about 3,500 people. right? A school, high school was, I think it's a 4A high school, what you call in Texas, maybe 200 graduating seniors, but not many people graduated. There was a very high attrition rate.
Dropout, yeah. But you played the violin.
Yes.
Tell us about the violin.
A good professor of mine, Yamil Yunus, he's still out there somewhere, convinced me to pick up the violin. And so I grabbed it up, picked it up as a hobby, and I was the worst violin player in the world for the first month. I got kicked out of violin class. Went home that summer. I don't know what it was, maybe stubbornness. When someone tells you you're not good at something, it's vindictive mentality, right? Came back to school the next year, and I was a very good violin player. I was playing with the high school as a middle schooler.
And that was just you just deciding, I'm going to get better at this.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it was just not wanting to be bad at something, I guess.
So you became first chair.
Yes. In high school, I was first chair. In 8th grade that year, I was second chair. And fortunately, our mariachi was very successful. They've played with Mariachi Vargas. I don't know if
I've heard
maybe
of them.
some of the audience are familiar with them.
Yeah.
We've shared the stage in many, many states. We've won multiple national championships, multiple state championships, I think 4 state championships and 2 national ones when I was in. So they built an empire. And I think they just recently played for the Biden administration, or they may have been invited to play for the Biden administration inauguration.
Yeah, in the inauguration.
Yeah.
That's tremendous. And you still play a little bit?
I still play. My violin is sitting right next to my couch. So when I get there, sometimes I pick it up instead of putting the news on.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Okay, so you developed lots of different talents.
Yes.
You get out of high school, and where do you go to college?
Well,
or what happened next?
Out of high school, I had a professor from the Edinburgh Orchestra or Symphony race after me as I was walking out my last day. He sat through we had a ceremonial last practice.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked me to join his orchestra and help me get a full ride, do everything he could to make sure that I was in his orchestra. And unfortunately for him, fortunately for me, I had already decided that I wanted to leave that area and go explore the world. And what better way to do that than to serve your country and join some sort of armed services branch.
So you joined the military?
Yes, I joined the Marines.
And the Marines?
Yes.
And where did you go? Where did you get stationed?
I was stationed out of Camp Pendleton, California. I spent about 9 years, 6 months, maybe a little more in the Marine Corps throughout my entire military tenure. Took that same mentality, those same values from Roma, Texas that I learned, and had my mom on the side of my shoulder all the time telling me to do the right thing. Unfortunately, was very successful in the Marines for some reason. Built a lot of good friendships, relationships.
So what does that mean to be successful in the Marines? Give us some examples.
Being promoted ahead of your peers, graduating boot camp, top 5 of your platoon, as a squad leader, for example, getting billets or jobs, as they call them in the Marine Corps, billets, in positions of authority. In my instance, I was a 22-year-old sergeant in Iraq leading maintenance operations for a group of 250 plus Marines. And we had in our inventory 32 helicopters, attack helicopters, Cobras and Hueys. I think we mounted $16 million a helicopter each. And so you're coordinating between logistics in country, while bullets are flying, rockets are flying, trying to make sure that pilots are keeping helicopters over the heads of our Marines on the ground, and for any other situational thing that pops up.
So you were doing logistics, but you also were in battle.
Correct. So when I was in Iraq, I was in Iraq in 2004 for the invasion of Fallujah. I wasn't in Fallujah, but we were part of the invasion as a military force. So a daily occurrence was, mortars, rockets, shot at. It was just a daily thing.
Yeah. So as far as of those 9 years, how many of those years were you in that environment?
2 years, I counted them.
Mm-hmm.
2 years of 3 different tours in different years. I lived in Iraq for a total of 2 years of my life.
So what's your takeaway, not necessarily about the war, whether it was right or wrong or any of that, but what was your takeaway of your experience being there?
I think there are a lot of very good Americans, very high caliber people in leadership across our armed forces. And not only that, I think there's a lot of very good people that leave the military that are doing some jobs out there that I would call, I wouldn't say wasted talent, but I think they're so good at being so smart at what they do, doing doctors, curing cancer, like all these things that people don't realize and see, where we could use some of that leadership sometime in our political world.
So there are officers in the military or just throughout the ranks?
I think throughout the ranks. I mean, you find leadership everywhere. I mean, oftentimes people have this stereotypical view of the military that there's very buff, very strong people that lead the charge. You'll find more often than not that the smallest person has the biggest heart and the strongest mind to succeed and overcome.
Yeah, and that's wonderful to hear, especially about our military, that is still made up of real patriots and people that love our country and that are basically giving their lives for our country. So you were in the military for 9 years. You come back to the United States. Where do you go?
Well, my time in the military, the last couple of years, I had an instructor position out in Camp Pendleton, and the luxury of that was having half-day Fridays. So I decided to go to school on my Fridays and on weekends and on nights. So I was able to get a degree, a 3-year degree, a 4-year degree in 3 years, and then apply for a master's.
Now, where'd you go to school?
I went to school at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. It's a private university. They usually have some sort of remote office or physical office near military bases, especially around air wing facilities.
Sounds very special, like a special place.
Yeah, my first class was called Intro to Space 101, and I literally had the former director of NASA, their Discovery Shuttle program. He passed away a few years later, but he was a former astronaut teaching us hardcore astronaut theory.
Wow.
I say it was insane.
But I think that just speaks to, like, it couldn't have been that easy to get in.
No. Yeah.
So you obviously are a special young man to have been admitted into that school.
I think everybody's special. It's just don't give up, right? You just like Rocky says, you take punches in the heart, you get hit. It's by standing up again.
Yeah.
And keep taking those punches because they're never going to stop.
Yeah. So you did this part-time.
Yes.
For 3 years. You graduated. You were in California. What happened next?
I went to grad school.
Okay.
And took a year off, went all into a master's program at San Diego State for Homeland Security. So think of it as an international diplomacy policy on steroids. That was a difficult program to get into. And the reason I did that is because I'm a fan of policy, conflict, wanted to learn more about cultures, terrorism, all those keywords you hear on the media that you really don't quite understand.
Right.
So
you went to get your master's, you finished there, then what?
Transition to the corporate world.
Okay. Yeah.
Lots of interviews, lots of applications later, was selected to go to Macy's, the retail store. They had an executive development leadership program for former military officers. Take note that I was not an officer, I was an enlisted person, so I was the only enlisted person to be hired off of the selection process for that. I spent a few years there, became a sales manager, operations manager, assistant store manager. I became a store manager in many different ways. So I had a store out in Post Oak in Texas A&M country.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had a store out in Houston, around $100 million revenue combined, 600 employees and about 25, 26 managers fluctuating here and there.
So you say you had a store. Were you the director over the entire operation?
Yes. Director of both locations. So what we call P&L, profit and loss.
Yeah.
I was directly responsible for profit and loss for both locations.
So Macy's, based in New York. Did you go to New York much for meetings and stuff?
They're based in New York and Cincinnati. My headquarters they had 2 headquarters. They now have 1. Yes, I did go to Cincinnati for meetings quite often. But the people from Cincinnati came over a lot more often than I traveled out there.
To get out of the cold?
I don't know. They really like taking long walks with an entourage of about 20 people in black suits.
Yeah. So what's your impression of the retail business?
I think my personal impression is the quality of the leadership in that business and the acumen of the people in that business. People think the retail industry is dead, and the way people consume those things traditionally may not be as strong and maybe modernizing to a different venue. But I learned my business acumen skills out of that organization and presenting daily sales, operations, numbers, digits to high-level executives in a quarterly basis, where you're in a room with 30 people getting drilled. You're in the center of the room getting drilled by 30 executives that are experts in every single thing, to call you or BS, for example.
Yeah.
And it's a very results-driven industry, right?
And so much inventory.
Oh, yeah.
So many items, sell so much stuff. To be able to keep account of all that stuff. I mean, talk about P&L, the loss and what do they call it when people steal stuff? They call it
I forget what it's called.
But anyway. Yeah. So I mean, I can't even imagine. And plus, it's just a 24/7 business. I mean, you're open on holidays. You never shut down.
It was wearing on the body.
No kidding, man.
As a Marine.
You never exactly. What was harder, being a Marine or being in retail?
I don't know yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's funny, man. That's tremendous. So somehow you ended up in Dallas.
Yep. I was sitting in a meeting and watching company strategic objectives. They were building out something called Omni-Channel Initiative, and I was helping provide feedback to make changes to those things. There was just a lot of things that I was seeing change in the winds with. We'll give an example, Amazon, right? Our direct competition was Amazon. We realized that our company had, and I don't speak on behalf of the company, and I just want to know people are aware of that, had presence in every single state and had the leverage to position themselves in a way where they can become fulfillment centers to directly compete against Amazon. I don't know what the case is now, right? But the progress is slow. And what really got me was a statement. The statement was, Amazon is not profitable. They will never be profitable. Fortunately, during my master's class, I did learn what a growth strategy is. You spend all your profits, you look like you don't make any money on paper, but next thing you know, you pop out all over the world, or build efficiencies in your business. You reinvest the money internally, or you lose some money in the first couple of years, or take advantage of tax incentives, whatever it may be, whatever you want to call it. And I just couldn't figure out how leadership, specific leadership, wasn't taking that seriously, right? And so I figured, what is the most lucrative industry that I could hop into? And learned it was tech industry. Applied to another military program. They only take 15 candidates a cycle. Was fortunate enough to do all these vetting, multiple interview process. It's like an academy, like a boot camp. And met a gentleman by the name of Jim Sheriff, who was in charge of Cisco, their partner channels for both the Americas and China. Who's a top level executive, was doing a philanthropy thing for veterans. Thank you, Jim, by the way. And graduated that with flying colors. They put their stamp on my resume, gave me the basic foundation. So imagine working 30 plus hours a week on top of your retail job and weekends to try to finish a 10-week boot camp to transition to a technical industry or technology industry.
Right, IT, yeah.
Hard work.
So you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now you are pretty much self-employed.
Yep.
You operate your own
Business within the business. Yeah.
Yeah. In the IT world.
In the IT world.
Yeah. And you just closed a $5 million deal?
Close to 6 million now.
Yeah. Wow, it keeps growing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's exciting, man. So what's ahead for the Rising Star? Where do you see yourself in a few years? I mean, you're a very young man. You know, there's a lot ahead. What's your passion now? You know, what would you like to do?
My biggest passion is to show people and minorities in this country or immigrants in this country that come from other countries that want a shot at the American dream. My message to them is that I'm living it. And all it takes is a little bit of elbow grease, a lot of hard work, and perseverance. That's it. And with keeping a right mindset, which means doing the right thing for not only yourself, but for others and those who benefit from it.
And you're interested in helping our country still? I mean,
Yes,
you're
of
kind of
course.
interested in politics a little bit.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm interested in politics. I think I'm learning a lot about it from you and the congressional campaigns and the local campaigns out here. I think serving is a very tremendous responsibility, unlike any other responsibility I've ever taken on my life personally.
Yeah.
Right? And for anybody who serves, I hope they feel the same way, because it's not a me job. It's a job to serve for others in this country at your sacrifice. Right?
Exactly.
So,
But it's well worth it, isn't it?
we'll see.
Well, it is. I mean, when you share your talents with others, they appreciate it,
Yes.
and it's a great feeling.
Correct. You know, being benevolent and helping someone else. I think karma exists, right? No matter what religion you are, this country accepts all religions for a reason, and that in itself helps us strive. We don't suppress any single brain, and that's our secret to being successful in this world.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being with us today, Juan.
Thank you, Orlando.
You're a great guy.
You're a better guy than I am.
No, you are. You're awesome, and I'm glad that you're in my circle of life, and I know we're going to stay in touch. But thanks for joining us today, man.
Thank you for having me.
Really
Orlando.
enjoyed it.
Appreciate it.
So thank you guys for being with us today for our this last episode of Tex-Mex TV. If you're watching and you have an idea or a person that you would like us to have on the show, you can go to send me an email at info@texmextv.com and give me your ideas, your suggestions. We always like hearing from you. And we always wrap up the show with a Vaya con Dios segment. And when I was Juan's age, I got married a little later in life. I was kind of a mess. I didn't do all that I could do, and I wasn't the person I could have been for a lot of reasons. But one of the main reasons I wasn't is because I didn't have God in my life. And when you don't do that, when you don't have that kind of guidance in your life, you tend to stray a little bit, and you don't become everything that you could become. So I wanted to just throw out a verse that's in the book of Lamentations, chapter 3, and it says, "It's good for a man to bear the yoke while he's young." And that's one thing I didn't want. I didn't want anything encumbering me. I didn't want anything burdening me down when I was a young guy. So I was trying to do my own thing. In Matthew 11:28, Jesus says, "Come all to me, all ye who are weary and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest." And he says, "Take my yoke and learn from me, for I'm meek and humble of heart, and you'll find rest for your souls." Then he says, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light." See, when we take God's yoke, when we take the yoke for what He has for us, all of a sudden things change. And what seems like would be really difficult is actually very easy, because you're not all screwed up, messing up, doing other things, messing up your life and making it heavier on yourself. You're following God's path, and that path is always easier and it's always lighter. And that's what he means by taking his yoke. Your life will be easier. It'll be better because you're working and you're doing things for him. So I encourage you to do that. Take his yoke, drop your own. When you take his, he's pulling it with you. God bless you. See you next time on TXMX TV.